Welcome to Ultra Uncovered, the podcast where we explore the untamed world of ultra running. I'm Corinne Chalvoy.
And I'm Russell Ditsworth. Together, we're peeling back the layers of iconic races, challenging terrains, and the incredible stories that fuel the passion for our sport.
Yeah, today we are going to uncover a under the radar, but highly sought after Colorado Front Range race.
We are going to be talking about the Quad Rock 25 and 50. But before we get too far into it, Corinne, why don't you show us what you have going on for shoes and tell us a little bit about what you're drinking for today.
All right. Well, first of all, I guess my outfit, even though I'm wearing the tank top from Solomon that I ran in earlier, I am also a little bit rock inspired because it is the Quad Rock. I mean, I know it's cheesy, but I kind of love a good rock outfit. So a little bit of rock inspiration with the lipstick and the leather jacket and the spikes if you're watching on YouTube. Otherwise, you can just imagine that. That's fine. But shoes wise, I'm actually not wearing a pair of running shoes. You might be able to run in these. I hear they're good for lifting and wearing at the gym.
Oh, I could see that.
So I'm wearing a pair of just old school Converse, like low top Converse, but they're sparkly and have some silver and some glitter on them. I do have my Gingy socks on from the run earlier, so rocking that. But had to go with the rock theme, so I've got silver shoes on. What are you wearing in terms of shoes, Russ?
Okay, so I have got, Quad Rock's a race you want to run fast. I've got a quick trail racer, so I've got the Topo Mountain Racer 3s. Nice. in a good orange colorway here.
Yep.
They are, I would say, rock solid outsole and great grip and a pretty light upper. So I'm excited to maybe race in these coming up.
That's awesome. I have yet to try Topos. I would like to try them. Might need to hit up some friends I know who run for them to see if I can get a couple pairs, but a lot of the people in our run club love them. So,
yep.
Yeah, they're, and they match your Boulder shirt. You're running the Boulder this year?
I am running the Boulder. I will not be wearing the Topo Mountain Races in the Boulder. But
a good idea. A good idea. But repping the Colorado scene with the Boulder shirt. So
there we go. And then today I wanted to mention that I've got a Hoplark, really, really hoppy. This is from their 0.0 line. It is a non-alcoholic beverage. And Hoplark is actually one of the sponsors of our Castle Rock Run Club Ridgeline Revel Gala. So, yes. Corinne, give us a quick plug for the gala.
Yeah, we've got to plug the gala. It's coming up. It's fast approaching. Let's see, we're recording this April 10th or 11th. And the gala, cheers, Russ, is on the 27th. And thank you so much to Hoplark. You started to jump on the no alcohol train a couple of months ago.
It's about 6 weeks ago.
Okay, 6 weeks ago.
In February.
Yeah. And you found these Hoplarks, which they have a wide variety of sparkling waters, teas, but they're all brewed with hops, right? So kind of an interesting
Most of them kind of have a hoppy flavor to them, but they've got some different ones too.
Yeah, like varying degrees. There's hibiscus, there's like
citrus.
Yeah, super hoppy if you like that, or very light hoppy. So check them out. They also have a really cool, I really like their logo. It's like this bird with super long legs, kind of reminds me of my legs. But yeah, so we're very honored to have them providing non-alcoholic options at the gala this year. If you're listening to this, anytime in April 2024 and you would love to come to the gala and you're in Colorado, please check it out. You can find the info on the Castle Rock Run Club Instagram page. And we'd love to have you there. It's going to be a really good time.
Awesome.
I'm drinking some tonic. I'm also doing non-alcoholic. I just have some tonic water.
There you go.
Cue spectacular tonic water. So,
well, cheers.
Cheers.
Let's get into the race.
Let's talk about Quad Rock.
All right. So real high level, Quad Rock 25 and 50. It is a 25-mile race and a 50-mile race. I would say both are actually very popular among racers. I would say maybe the 50-mile is a little bit more known and has had some folks run it with some pretty good times, but this is a race in the Front Range of Colorado. It's outside of Fort Collins. It occurs in Lowry State Park and the Horsetooth Reservoir area, and very well traveled trails, popular trails. And if you're listening to this in 2024, this year's race occurs on May 11th. 50-mile race goes off first, early. I think it's 5:30
start. Yep.
5:30 start. And then the 25-mile race
starts at 7.
Follows up about an hour and a half later.
Yeah.
And the 25-mile race is the first 25 miles of the 50-mile route.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the course and the route itself in more detail here. But the race you mentioned is put on by Gnar Runners. They are a Colorado-based race organization that also puts on a couple of other races that have really gained a lot of popularity in recent years. The Never Summer 60K and 100K, as well as the Blue Sky Marathon. These are some races that, for maybe their time of year or just because it's a great organization, we get some ballers that show up at these races.
Absolutely.
And so it's interesting, and you'll hear later in the interview we do with our special guest. But I don't know, just a really good time of year, and kind of this early season spring opportunity to come race in Colorado. So it being in May, one thing that's really important to note is that it can, we usually get another snow storm of some sort between now and Mother's Day. And this race is usually around May 10th-ish or whatever. So there could be snow. It could be hot. Or a lot of years, this race is pretty muddy. So these are all things to consider. Spring in Colorado is totally unpredictable. The year I ran in 2018, it was a complete mud fest, and it made for pretty challenging, just underfoot, a lot of slipping. And I remember afterwards, we were in the post-race area, which is great. It's a great environment, but we're just like, they had a hose out there and everyone's just spraying their legs off because they're just caked in mud. And it was actually kind of chilly. So you could get, a wide variety of conditions depending on the year.
Well, and like the time of year we're in right now, it's early April, and we've had some really nice weather recently, and people think like, oh, okay, we've made it through winter. And you're right. There's always that last storm that just surprises people or things like that. So could be anything weather-wise. But from an underfoot perspective, the trails, from my understanding, are very runnable. The grade is not something that is going to put you immediately into a hands and feet kind of climbing. It's very much like a medium grade climbing and descending. And like I said, very well-traveled trails well-traveled and well-maintained trails in the state park. So even if there is some weather, that you could expect trails to be in decent condition, unless you get kind of that extreme mud and moisture combining. Yeah,
they are established, pretty easy to follow. So think, going in a little bit to the course itself. So, this is kind of one of those middle, in terms of altitude type races. So we're like starting around 5,400 feet, just above Mile High.
Yep.
5,280. So right around 5,400, and it does get up to about 7,000 feet.
7,000 feet. Yep.
It's not low elevation, certainly not sea level, but you're also not talking about, Leadville and 10,000. So it's kind of a, I don't know. I don't know if altitude could play in if you're coming from sea level potentially, but, if you live in like a Utah or, somewhere 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 feet, you might not notice it that much.
Yeah. And I'll mention 11,000 feet of climbing in the 50 miler, 5,500 feet of climbing in the 25 miler. So there's a fair amount of climbing and descending, but like you're saying, we would not categorize this as a high altitude race. It's it's in the foothills of Denver. So, Denver in the Front Range right there, you're, like you said, going from 5,500 feet to 7,100 feet and kind of up and down.
Yeah. Yeah. You are going to really work your legs, though, whether you're doing the 25 or the 50 miler, because as you mentioned, you've got climbing and descending, and there's not a whole lot of sections in this course that are just kind of flat or rolling. Maybe at the beginning and the end a little bit.
Yep.
But in the middle there, if you're doing the 25 miler, you're going to have 3 significant climbs and descents. And if you're doing the 50, you're going to have 6. Because it is a looped course. So the 25 miler does the first 25 miles of the 50-mile race. And if you're in the 50 miler, you're just then going to come back to the start, turn around, and do that same loop in reverse, kind of a washing machine style.
Yeah, the washing machine style there. The climbs, you go up to Tower Aid Station multiple times. So you'll see kind of that area quite a bit during the event. If you're in the 50 miler, even if you're in the 25 miler, you go up there twice. And so hopefully it becomes somewhat of a predictable high point or vantage point for that race in terms of like knowing like where you are in course and how far you are into the race. It's something that you can really use to gauge your efforts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if it's clear, you can also get some really nice views during the race. So we talked about it being fairly exposed. You're not in a lot of tree cover, and so you can take in some views. Both directions. There will be sections that you're kind of rolling along the edge of a kind of a mountainside, and you can look down and out into, whether it's Nebraska on one side or into, just kind of the Front Range, and probably have some really nice views.
Oh yeah. The reservoir will be there. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful park.
Yeah. All right. Where should we go next?
Let's dive into some of the gear considerations you might make for a race like Quad Rock. So we're going to talk about the aid stations in a little bit, but this is a race that is very well supported. Gnar Runners is known for having great aid stations with lots of support. So and they're occurring at a frequency to which you're not on course for more than 7 miles in any spot without having that aid. So that might be, depending on what your pace is over varied terrain, that might be what you use to make a decision on whether or not, like, I'm going to take a pack with this much capability for fluid, and all these things are obviously conditions dependent, but know that there are going to be fully stocked aid stations at that frequency or greater along the course.
Yeah, if you're running the 50 mile, depending on how long you think it's going to take you, do you think you would bring a rain jacket? I mean, obviously you're going to look at the weather ahead of time, or a layer or something. That might be something to consider, either having one or putting it in a drop bag. Something.
So the only place you can put a drop bag is the start finish.
Okay.
And so if you have crew, maybe that's an opportunity, because you would see along about halfway in, you would be able to get, see a drop bag or see something if you had crew there. Personally, I probably would minimize everything if it's decent conditions.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, if it's looking like it's thunderstorms in the afternoon and other things, and you want to be prepared, you should absolutely have those things with you in any ultra marathon race, even if it's in a state park.
Right. Yeah. And if you're traveling from out of state, I mean, probably just bringing gear for every kind of scenario.
Absolutely.
Just because you don't know what's going to happen. Probably gloves. I mean, it's always cold in Colorado in the morning.
Absolutely wear gloves.
You're puffy. Absolutely wear gloves. You're like, absolutely. And then also maybe a couple of different shoe options, just in case you end up encountering, that mud gear, then you might want to throw something else on. I think you could run this race in road shoes if you were comfortable in them. You could also run it in trail shoes. And then, if you have a particular shoe that you like for muddy terrain, maybe keep that in the quiver as well. We're going to, like we said, we're going to go through the aid stations a little bit, but I do think, if I'm not mistaken, you might be able to have a one drop bag at Soldier Canyon. That's like 25 miles in.
Okay, so that is the start finish
website. Oh, that's right. That makes sense. Okay, there we go. Start finish.
You're good.
All right, good math. Start finish, and then Horsetooth is the other area. But that's it, right? Yeah. And there's a couple of places where you can have crew. This was not super obvious, like if you're just looking at the website, but then you can have crew. It was a little bit loose on, and that's like at the entries of the parks, right? So at Horsetooth and at Lori. Something to note, you probably want to have some cash on you because these are state parks, and some of them, if you're a secondary vehicle, if you're crew, you might you get in with the race entry, but if you're crewing, you might want to have some cash on you to pay for entry into the park.
Yep. Absolutely. So as you start this race, they start everybody out on kind of a roadway section to kind of allow everyone to kind of find their place among the crowd, right? But one of the interesting things about this with the 50 miler is as you come back, it's not an exact washing machine. So it's something to look out for at the end of the race, rather than come back on that roadway that you started out on, that 2.5 miles of road. You will actually dump onto an adjacent trail where you actually probably won't even really be able to see the road much, and it won't be recognizable. So it'll be the last 2.5 miles of the race will be completely new trail for you. But it's something to think about. Like once you get to that spot and you've got, however much left, it's not going to be just road back the way that you came out. You will have to navigate the single track all the way to the finish line.
Right. So it could feel a little longer. It also, don't worry, you're not lost.
You are not lost. You are on course.
Always a good idea, if you can, to download the GPX of the course beforehand. And, a lot of the races are doing that. It's just kind of a really good peace of mind. My husband's gotten lost in many a race, and I've gotten lost in a few of them, and it's just not a fun feeling. So that's a good backup and a safety. But yeah, this, we talked a little bit about the gear and stuff. Appropriately on course, you're going to have access to gnarly nutrition.
Gnarly nutrition. It's a match made in heaven.
I wonder if that's how I pitched it to them. Hey, Gnarly, we have this race, and we're the Gnar Runners. Would you like to sponsor it? I would be like, that makes total sense. But no, Gnarly's great. So you're going to have probably their hydration, I would imagine. Either their Fuel 2.0 or their Hydrate. Fuel 2.0 from them has calories. It's kind of, like a higher calorie, couple hundred calories, per scoop type option. And then their Hydrate is really just an electrolyte. So it's a lower calorie. So, maybe just, I would imagine they're probably going to have either both, or it's going to be notated, but you might want to, ask if you're rolling into the aid station, is that the high calorie or whatever.
Maybe not mix them up, or if you are really only looking for the electrolyte one, and you get, I'm sure there's going to be a slightly different consistency taste to that. So something to consider for sure.
So you'll have access to that. And then I would imagine, and I remember from running it, that it was kind of like just your quintessential aid station table. There was just like potato chips and
orange slices
and M&Ms and
Coke, ginger ale.
I mean, just what you would expect from an ultra. So you'll have those offerings as well. Pickles. I don't know, if it's rainy, could be humid, salt. So just pay attention to that and act accordingly. Whatever looks good and sounds good at the aid station, pick it up.
Absolutely. All right. Should we talk a little bit about the course records that are out there for the 50 mile and 25 mile?
Yeah, let's do it. I think we're probably good on aid stations. We covered that there's not a whole lot of mileage in between them. So I don't know, if you're trying to run this race fast, you'd probably be okay with just a couple of handhelds.
Handhelds, waist belt, maybe for some of your own nutrition. Probably not going with a vest.
I mean, it depends on what your comfort level is, but I think you could do it with handhelds. I don't know if pulls are allowed in this race. I feel like maybe remember seeing them out there for some of the 50-mile runners. We should double check that. But obviously, if you're using poles, you probably want a vest because you want your hands free. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about, because it's super interesting when a smallish race. So this race is only a couple hundred entrants in both distances.
Yep.
There is a wait list that occurs, and I think I read that they do go through, maybe 50 to 70 people on the wait list a year, but it's not small, but it's also not super big. So a couple hundred in each, you're talking maybe 400 total people out there on the trail. And there have been some amazing people that have run this race. I mean, way back in 2018, I was third in that race. I came in after Abby Levine, and I believe it was a Solomon athlete who won. I cannot remember her name, but Solomon was sponsoring the race that year. And then if you check out the history, it's just it is a bit of a who's who of ultra running on the top, the leader time. So so who holds our current course records in each distance?
So for the 25 mile, Jackson Brill has run a blistering 3:13 on this course.
3:13.
Very, very quick for a 25 mile race that has 5,500 feet of elevation gain.
That was back in 2018.
2018.
Yeah. Where is Jackson Brill? We need to hear from Jackson.
That's a good question. He's probably in the lab.
Yeah, right. He's on the 45% incline treadmill.
He's figuring out the most efficient way to navigate a 40% grade.
Agreed.
And then on the women's side, Ashley Brassevin ran very quickly here, 3:49 in 2022.
Yeah.
So,
Ashley, shout out to Ashley, just had a baby. Congratulations.
Congrats.
She's going to be coming back. Yeah. I just try to avoid all races where Ashley is entered because she's so fast. But she really does tear it up on a lot of like mountainous stuff. She's run so fast at our local trail, Indian Creek, 15. Yep. Oh man, she's a hell of a climber. So, that's so fast. How about the 50 mile?
50 mile. So on the women's side, Marion Hogan in 2017 ran 8 hours and 29 minutes.
Yeah.
8:29.
That had to be, 2017. This has got to be like some of her early racing, but
sure. Yep.
But dang, that's fast. It's very fast. And we all know who Marion Hogan is now. Nobody probably knew back then, but
nope. we all know now.
Yeah.
And then on the men's side, Boulder local Ryan Smith has gone up and run a very quick 7 hours and 20 minutes. And there are probably 15 guys within 20 minutes of that on the list. Yeah. So, and he's got the top spot.
That's awesome. And I believe we're going to talk about who's lining up this year because it's pretty exciting. I believe Ryan is on that list. So I don't know. This is the kind of course that I feel like conditions could really determine whether or not those course records are under threat. Maybe it'll be a great year this year.
You want dry trails and good footing, but I think if it's too hot, then that can be an equalizer that can take the times down as well.
Totally. Yep. All right. So just a little bit of, again, we mentioned kind of the post-race vibes. This race doesn't necessarily have anything in terms of qualifications for Western or things like that. No, there are like affiliations with other races, so to speak. But what it does have, like we mentioned, is it's just in an ideal time of year. And it's got two distances that like, it's kind of cool. You don't really see it's not a marathon and it's not 100K. It's a 25 miler and a 50 miler. So I kind of like that they're like going against the grain of, the standard race distances. And they're like, this is what the loop is. It makes sense. And we're just going with an even quarter and $50. That's what we're doing.
Yeah. And it didn't add some out and back to make it a marathon, right? It's a natural loop that they like. You go up to towers twice, you hit a lot of these amazing trails, and they do it in a very efficient fashion. Yeah. I think the wash the machine style for the 50 miler makes a ton of sense, and really you get both views of the trail. It probably feels a little different. You get both climbs and descents, on the same trail, and think you really get a good picture of that Fort Collins area trail scene.
Yeah. I gotta go up there. I hear Fort Collins is turning into a really cool town, and I have not been there in many years. So I'm sure there's a lot to do and check out in the surrounding area if you're visiting. Pretty decent cutoff. So 14-hour cutoff for the 50 miler, which, that's not a super generous cutoff for this type of.
I would say it's challenging.
It's probably challenging because considering the elevation gain and descent. But if you maybe want to try this race out first time, maybe look at the 25 miler because it's got a 12.5-hour cutoff. So they basically do the same finish time for both distances. So you could, take 10, 12 hours to do the 25 miler, really just experience out.
7:30 p.m.
Yeah.
So they cut off the 25 milers the same time that they cut off the 50 milers.
Yep.
Gives you a lot of time to be out on course. So I would say that the barrier to entry on the 25 miler is very approachable.
Right.
If you want to go out and enjoy a day on the trails, you could go do that out there and test your own limits. But wherever that lies, I like it when a race gives kind of that option. There's the advanced option. The 50 miler is an advanced race. It's a 14-hour cutoff. That's challenging.
Yeah.
But there's, a distance in there that could work for anybody.
Yeah.
And could be something that somebody could go complete their first 20 plus mile day.
Mountain trail race and I really like the races do that, and it makes a ton of sense. I mean, Javelina does the same thing.
Yeah, the 100K.
The 100K. It's got almost the same cutoff as like the 100 miles. So it's great when races do that. Really appreciate it. I also like that this is like one day. That's it. Saturday. Usually a Saturday.
It's going to be light pretty much the whole time too.
Yep.
5:30 start. I can't imagine that too many people would be starting with headlamps.
Yeah.
So you'll get that twilight light to start, and then you finish before it's dark.
Yeah.
So.
All right. There is if you're watching this on YouTube, there is a small Easter egg that we are hiding in this episode, and you need to check it out and see if you can find our hidden clue. I don't know. If you find it, we want to engage with the audience. Like, we want to find out who's listening and see if people are watching and check it out. So tell us if you can find the little clue. It is a nod to the name of the race. So if you happen to check it out on YouTube and find that and you want to comment, I don't know, we'll find something to reward you with if you actually get this right. I don't know. We just thought it would be fun.
Sounds good.
All
Do you want to mention some of the folks, if you're listening to this ahead of the 2024 race, some of the unique names that are out there in the different fields, the 50-mile field?
Yeah. Well, this is not a full prediction show. I don't know that anyone else is covering the Quad Rock 25 and 50, and they should be, because there are some serious names in the race this year, and I feel like that's happening at every race. I was looking at Gorge. I was looking at, we've got just every race seems to have a handful of people that you're like, whoa.
And maybe not the distance that you think of either.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
like, let's look at Quad Rock and see who's in the 50. Oh my gosh, look who's in the 25.
Right, exactly. And this is, I think that these are kind of, like you said, both can be equally as competitive. The 50 mile might be considered the kind of the marquee distance. But in the 25 miler this year, we've got, about 143 males, 107 females, and two or three non-binary individuals. Really love that Gnar Races allows people to register under that designation. And so a few of the names to look out for this year in 2024, again, Ryan Smith's back running the 25 miler.
Yep.
Maybe he's going to try to secure both top times in both distances. Who knows?
3:13 is pretty tough.
Yeah, I know. That would be wild. Kyle Leto, who I'm not super familiar with, but I did look back, and this individual, he is a 2-time winner of the Never Summer 100K, I believe, in 2022 and 2021. I'm not sure he raced in 2023. So, but he's coming back for the 25 miler. Probably look out for him. I'd imagine he is quick. and knows how to navigate Colorado trails.
Yes.
And then there were a few names in the women's race that were super interesting to me. So Imogen Ainsworth. So if you are in the Ouray area, there's a mountain pass called Imogene Pass. But I met Imogen Ainsworth when I was racing Kennebec Mountain, which is in Durango area. And I haven't seen her name around for a little while, but she was a crusher. She was definitely like podium at that race the year I ran, and a really strong climber. And so I'm excited to see her name out there. We also have Sophie Anders, who I know from the Solomon, she was at the Solomon Academy 2021. They had a short distance group and a longer distance group, and we overlapped one day, and I was there for the long distance and she was there for the short distance. So I met Sophie Anders really fast.
Cool.
Really fast and really, really good. And then Becca Wendell, who just
golden ticket,
got a golden ticket, is jumping into the 25 miler here, which is interesting.
Probably a lead up for her training for Western States.
Yeah. But that's going to be a heck of a 25-mile women's race. Also wanted to mention Whit Blair in the non-binary category. She, or they, I should say, apologies, won Behind the Rocks 30K just this year in March. So seems to be in pretty good shape, and maybe just starting to creep up in distance. And so maybe someone else to check out and look out for.
Yeah, a great Mad Moose race early in the year, part of that Moab series that they do.
Yep. How about the 100K? The not 100K, the 50 miler.
The 50 miler had some names that really poked out at me, and honestly, in the women's category, there were a number of them. Leah Yingling, who we all know from Further, and Lululemon athlete, and leading up to her campaign for Western States as well. Michelle Yates, a Colorado crusher of many years, has won Run Rabbit Run multiple times, and is just a stalwart of a runner here in the Colorado area.
Yep.
And then we've got Sarah Beal and Ellie Pell and Caitlin McDaniel. So there's a lot of names here.
Yeah.
Could be.
Caitlin McDaniel got, I believe, second or third at the Gorge 50K last year. That's where I first heard her name. And then this is really cool because Leah and Michelle are both running Run Rabbit Run later in the year. So
little preview
of their racing against each other. And then on the men's side.
So on the men's side, we've got Tyler Fox running. We've got Chris Harrington, who's local to Golden, Colorado, has finished very high at Leadville and has done well at Rabbit Elite, done well at Black Canyon as well. And then Ryan Montgomery is returning champion from last year. Yeah.
In the non-binary category, and probably the favorite again this year. Super excited to see what they're going to do, which leads us into
our interview segment.
I don't know, who's it with? Somebody very special, and we really love the conversation. So we hope you'll stay tuned and listen to some kind of firsthand lived experience of an individual who has done super well on the course, and some more great insights on things you can expect at the Quad Rock races.
Thanks for joining.
Welcome to Ultra Uncovered. Today we have a very special guest. My name is Russell Ditzworth.
And I'm Corinne Shalvoy, and joining us today to talk about the Quad Rock 50-mile race. We have a very accomplished ultra runner. I'm not going to mention his name because I'm first going to talk about all of his amazing accolades. This runner has completed 1,400 plus mile races before the age of 30, including running the Tahoe 200. So as I was looking back on his career thus far, it just was super impressive to see how many things they had done. And also a Western States Golden Ticket winner, 7th place finish in the male category at the 2023 Western in a time of 15:38. third at Tarawera in 2023, and second and third at Javelina, running a sub 13-hour time just last year in 2023. So I am super excited to welcome Ryan Montgomery. He is a professional trail runner for Janji, The Feed, Ultimate Direction, and Sunto. Thanks for coming on, Ryan.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I mean, I've been able to get to know you, Corinne, via the feed like partnership. So it's great to be here, chat with you again, and also Russell. It's nice to meet you.
Awesome. Well, to start off here, a little non-trail question. How are you doing? I know that you have the Boston Marathon coming up, and I would love to hear how you've enjoyed training for something a little bit different, and how are things going? You've got maybe coming into some taper time.
Yeah, well, actually, taper not yet because some fun fact is actually I'm running a half marathon tomorrow, which is
Ooh,
what is that, like 9 days before Boston or so. This is a race that is near-ish to my house in Ogden, Utah, and I was supposed to run it last year, but I got canceled due to weather, so I got rebooked onto the event for this year. So I decided just to do it. So I guess I'm viewing this as like a quote unquote tune up race for the Boston Marathon. But yeah, it's interesting running these I guess for an ultra marathon or like a faster, shorter race because it requires such a different discipline. And as experienced as I am, I think marathons and like more tempo efforts are still a little intimidating for me. So I'm mostly just excited for the challenge, and also Boston's such a vibe.
that's awesome. Corinne, are
Yeah,
you there?
I am. I turned my video off for a moment, those watching, because I'm having internet stuff. So apologies for that. But I am here, and I'm going to quietly ask the next question. So, okay, so we're going to get into quad rock. I mean, I'm super excited for you for Boston. You're going to absolutely rock it, Ryan. But we're talking about quad rock. So we're going to make you go way back in time, a year ago plus, to when you ran this race last year. You won the race overall in 7 hours and 42 minutes. That is an insanely fast time on this course. I've run the 25 mile on this course. It has a lot of climbing, 11,000 plus feet in the 50 mile. And in 2023, you ran the seventh fastest time in the history of the race. There's actually been a lot of elites and pros who have towed the line here. So first question for you is, why do you think Quad Rock, which is based here in Colorado, is a race that attracts pros and elites?
Yeah, well, I think there's a handful of reasons why Quad Rock in particular attracts various elites. And I think the obvious one, I think, is just due to its geographic location. It's really close to Boulder, Colorado, which we all know Boulder, Colorado hosts many of the elites in our sport. And so I think it's oftentimes viewed as like a backyard like nearby race that's a good hard race for elites to throw in their quote unquote early season at the beginning of the summer. So I think there's a geographical component, but I think probably even bigger reason is I've observed that Quad Rock has been used as a race in preparation for Western states. I know that was my intention running it last year. And I think a lot of the other elites in the past 3 years have used it also as a tune-up race or like a practice race in preparation for Western. So I think that's also another reason. And I think thirdly, it's just like a really well organized race as well. It's on really nice trails that are steep but like runnable and not super technical. So it's like a pretty low risk race, I would say as well, which is probably why people like it.
So to piggyback off of that, can you talk a little bit about why? So you're signed up for it again this year ahead of Western States. Is that kind of your idea? How do you see this fitting into your training in preparation for Western States?
Yeah, I actually thought it was a really good race last year for Western specifically, and so that is the reason why I'm doing it again. Um, but I think there's a couple reasons why I'm doing it. One is I think the course because it is pretty like up and down a lot, I think prepares you for what it seems like to experience the canyon section at Western States, where you're already on fatigue legs after about a 50K. And then you have to go through this canyon section on the Western States course where you go up and down, about 2,000 foot climbs, 2,000 foot descents. And I find that the Quad Rock course simulates that incredibly well. So for me personally, I think it's a great preparation for that. And then secondly, I think it's just like a fun race, like honestly. I'm personally not someone who loves highly technical trails. I know that's maybe blasphemous for like the trail runner in this audience, but I love California carpet trails, like I'll say it all day long. And I find that the Quad Rock course is not very technical, which I enjoy personally.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's interesting how people define technical and not. I mean, I think it's really fun to be able to just run fast on trails, and when there's fewer rocks there, it's like, oh, I can do that. And so, yeah, speaking a little bit to that, you're mentioning you're kind of calling it non-technical. How would you describe the climb? So there is 11,000 feet, which is not a small amount. In 50 miles, would you say these are shorter? Kind of give the listener an idea of what to expect in terms of the climbs and descents, if you would.
Yeah, I appreciate the question because now I have to like go back through like my head of like how was this race? And I think it was pretty varied. And it's also like I'm saying this in a vacuum. Like obviously my experience as an ultra trail runner is gonna be very different depending on your level of experience. So this is very like subjective for Ryan Montgomery, but in my opinion, I find the climbs to be quite sustained actually. Oftentimes, I find the climbs to be like over a mile long at certain points. Um, so while the climbs are sustained and long, I didn't find them to be incredibly steep. If I remember correctly, as like the front elite in this race, I ran pretty much the whole race, except I think maybe like the last climb or second to the last climb. I did a few like power walks here and there. So depending on your strength and your aptitude for climbing, I actually find it to be like quote unquote runnable for an elite. I would say like for like a mid pack runner, there'll definitely be like walking sections because some of the climbs were a little punchy, but for the most part, long sustained climbs, but runnable, I would say, depending how fresh you are.
Looking at the course, one of the things that's interesting about Quad Rock is that it's set up as a 25-mile loop that you run one direction and then you basically turn around and do the whole thing in reverse. I guess my question for you is, do you have a preferable direction? And is this something that you liked or disliked or found challenging? Or what did you think about like basically turning around, flipping around and doing the exact same trail the other way, all the way around?
Well, as someone who's ran Desert Solstice, which if anyone knows what Desert Solstice is, you run 24 hours on a 400-meter track. Um, after experiencing that, no loop course can be as bad as running on a track for 24 hours. So, a 25-mile loop feels like a point to point, essentially, to me. So to answer your question, I didn't mind it. I think in our community there might be some purists that like only do points to points or do only like one loop courses, but in my opinion, I liked it because when you do a washer machine style where you do a loop and then you do it the other direction, it almost feels like a completely different course because you're running it in the opposite direction. So it never felt like I was running on the same trail, like at any given time, because you get to experience it in a completely different plane of experience. Like first you're going up and now you're going down the same trail, which is totally different experience. And also it made it very spectator friendly. So if you have crew or friends, there are like key aid stations on the course that are like makes it really easy to crew and also to spectate. So I think there was like a very fun community element to the race because of that washer style as well. So overall, my opinion is that I think it's awesome, and I didn't mind it.
Which way did you like better?
Ooh. Okay, actually, I didn't like I probably liked the first half better. And I think the only reason why I say that is because when I finished, I wasn't like 100% sure on the course, on like where you finished, because you kind of
Mm.
get spit out from the mountain and you're kind of in this more of like the valley part of the course. And then you actually have to run like another like 4 to 5 miles, like kind of on a rolling downhill all the way to the finish line. And I kept thinking like the finish line was coming and then coming. And then you're like, wait, it's like still, I have another mile to go. So I think the finish just felt like it was really long once you got off the mountain. It just kind of went on for a bit, but that's my only reason for why I think I like
You
the
like the
first.
first half?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Got a
That's
little
a
road in there to start though too, so that helps.
yeah,
yes,
that's a good tip for people running the race. Just like it's not over when you think it might be over. Just be prepared to mentally need to run another few miles once you feel like you're down.
yeah. Because I think when my watch hit 50 miles, I was like running 6:30s, like trying to get to the finish line, but everyone's watch is off, and I don't know, just like and then I ended up running like 3 miles, like
Oh
at
no.
my faster than preferred pace probably at the end of a 50 miler, but it was fine.
Okay, so the next question is this is something that's kind of always interesting to me when I'm looking at a course and researching it, and I'm like, oh, I want to run that. That looks like an easy course on paper. Like some could argue Western States, net downhill looks kind of easy. When you see this elevation profile on paper, or when you were first looking into the race, would you say having done it, it is harder than it looks on paper, easier, about what you would expect?
Yeah, so if your question's like, is it easier or harder than how I perceived it to be on paper? Yeah, it's hard because I definitely have a bias as like someone who runs elite, and I thought it was exactly how I anticipated it, like hard, but not like insane, if that makes sense. Like, because depending on like what your experience is in running mountain ultras, like I've ran mountain ultras where you're like deep in the woods and you're like going over rocks and roots and you're going up a mountain and it's like taking forever. Like quad rock is not that experience. Like it's run on trails that are incredibly well used, well marked. Um, Again, not like super rocky. And so from that experience, I thought it was actually easier because I think I anticipated a bit more technicality.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of just like the volume of climbing, it's still substantial. So I would say that was on par with what I expected, but um, I would say probably easier because I think I was expecting more of like a rugged mountain race, and it definitely wasn't that. It was just like, I'm running on like this my backyard trail network by Horsetooth Reservoir, and it's like really awesome trail network. So in that regard, I think it was like very not intimidating because the trails were like such high quality, I would say.
Yeah,
Did that
just
help
to
answer your question?
It
I don't
it
know if that was
totally
too vague.
did. No, no. It totally did. I think that as a kind of a follow-up to that, we should probably reference, where do you do majority of your training? So you live in Utah, near Salt Lake, correct?
Actually, like Park City area.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. So you're already training at altitude, and you're training around some fairly big mountains, right? So I
Hmm.
guess just to reference like your point of view of that's kind of where your home trails are.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, you bring up a good point. Like, I have coming, like, from my perspective, I have an advantage because I live and train at altitude. If I remember correctly, the Quad Rock course doesn't get incredibly high in elevation. I think it, like, maybe peaks out at 8,000 max or so, like, around that. So, not, or maybe even it was, like, less than that. But it's not incredibly high for Colorado standards, but I'm imagining if you're coming from like the San Francisco Bay Area and you're running, you know, a race, in this area for the first time, like the elevation will definitely have a huge factor against you. Actually, I think a really great comparison, if anyone's ever ran in Marin Headlands in the San Francisco Bay Area, I feel like the terrain and steepness is like very similar to, running up Miwok Trail in the Marin Headlands. I found it to be like very similar to that experience. Obviously, you're in like a wooded area at Quad Rock. And to answer your other question, Corinne, like for me, I trained a lot on like dirt roads in my neighborhood that are like varying terrain from up to like 10% grade. I run like dirt rail trails a lot. And then when the snow melts out, I do like more trail running. So I'm a pretty like agnostic to, being loyal to any terrain. I kind of run it all.
No, that's great background, and I think the comparison is really fitting. Other than the, like you said, the elevation and kind of
Mhm.
some of the other things, because terrain and kind of the steepness makes such a big difference. If
Mhm.
you were to give some advice to somebody coming to this race, maybe from outside of Colorado for the first time, what would you say? And I guess maybe you could maybe gear part of your answer towards like a mid packer, and then maybe if you have any advice for other people who are looking to run fast.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest strengths that should be developed if you want to have a successful race at Quad Rock is being able to execute like those long grinding climbs. A climb that is like 1 to 2 miles long, where you can just like sustain that type of effort without necessarily like having to, consistently walk. I think that type of training where you can get really good at that and master that, I think yields really great success. And honestly, like a run where you have to like go up a 1,000 to 2,000 foot like dirt road and then descend it and then go up again and then descend it, just to like provide that type of impact on your legs and then keep going. I think that type of training yields really well for success at Quad Rock, because that's essentially the course. The whole time you're like going up or you're going down, and then you're going up and then you're going down. So training that masters that type of sustained climbing would be great. I Something that was interesting as like the winter last year, and I was racing this other person named Bobby Peavy, and I remember him and I were racing together the first lap, and I remember it was like the second climb that I felt like we were going up it way too aggressively. I know my heart rate pretty well, and I felt like my heart rate was going up a little bit higher than I would anticipate for a 50 miler. And so I actually pulled back. I like let Bobby like go,
Oh,
um, knowing that like I know my body well enough. And I think that yielded to my success because I was still able to have more energy and power in my climbing after lap one. And so I think that's something to consider if you want to be competitive at this race, is not getting too aggressive early on, because the climbs are really runnable at the beginning. Like they feel good, but no, like you're going to look down at your watch and you're going to like say, oh my gosh, I just climbed 4,000 feet and I'm at mile 15. Like you got to like reel it in to know that you have enough, ammunition in the chamber for like the last 15 miles. So that's like my biggest advice is like, it's a course that can really eat you up if you don't conserve properly.
okay. So you let Bobby go. How long was it before you saw him again?
I think I passed him. So at the turnaround, I like was climbing back up and I saw him like doing the zigzag, and
Yeah,
so I think I passed him on that climb, leaving the turnaround.
nice,
So yeah, there's
nice. And then it
definitely a
was
lot of spots where you can
we
spot
can
people and
see
like hunt them down. Yeah,
take a split. Like, oh, how we
yeah,
doing?
yeah.
Corinne, we've got no audio. You're muted.
Okay, sorry, we're having all kinds of issues. I'm going to try to ask this question. So Ryan, this is a Gnar race. So it's put on
Hmm.
by Gnar Runners, and you mentioned how well organized it is. They have some other races in Colorado that have really become kind of big races. Never Summer, the Blue Sky Marathon.
Hmm.
Some of these races, they seem to kind of garner the attention of really strong runners. So could you talk a little bit about just what you appreciated in terms of race organization? You said it had a great community vibe. Anything else in particular you think they're doing really well?
Yeah, so in full transparency, I've never raced any of the other Gnar races like Never Summer or Blue Sky Marathon. Just from my friends, they have given me amazing feedback that those are great races. So at least from like my umbrella of running quad rock, I found quad rock to embody all of the good of like what grassroots trail running is. Like, you go to this finish line, it's not like a UTMB finish line with like crazy paraphernalia. It's like pretty casual, and there's like a barbecue and drinks and everyone's hanging out at this like picnic area. And so it's like very family like oriented. I felt like, but I felt like just so cared for. Like everyone would come up to me and like congratulate me, and I felt like there was no egos among anyone, and friendly competition at the end of the race. Like we're all hugging each other, so it just felt very family, which I really appreciated. Um, and I think it like I value, want to support race organizations that like are still trying to embody some of those grassroots type elements of what ultra trail running was founded upon. And I feel like Gnar does that incredibly well. And also like they like invited me back, and they're like, do you want to come back as reigning champion? And I was like, that's such a nice gesture. And also Gnar Races is like one of the few race organizations that offers non-binary categories, which I really appreciated. And just like that extra level of consideration, I thought was really supportive, especially for like the LGBTQ plus community.
That's a great point. And Ryan, you're like such a great champion for the LGBTQ plus community in ultra running and otherwise. Can you like maybe tell us a little bit more about why that's so important to you, and maybe some things that you have going to help kind of be that champion?
Yeah, well, I guess about me, fun fact, identify as queer, so I guess level set with that. But I think also specifically is just that throughout my lived experience, I've always wanted to have really amazing examples of what does a queer runner look like in sport. Like think about all like those great examples that you had in sport, where whether you looked up to this woman in the um, you know women's like football or women's
WNBA.
basketball league, or if you looked up to this NFL player. And yeah, exactly. Like, we all had those role models, and I think that's really lacked a lot in trail running, outside of like the stereotypical cisgender Caucasian identifying person. And so I think when I grew in my sports in terms of performance, I saw it as like an opportunity to be an example to other queer identifying people in this sport, because there are a lot of queer people in trail running, but not so much visibility. So part of that is like, as an athlete, I race with that type of ethos and intention. And then also I do some community organizing as well. So I organize some group runs in a couple states and want to expand, but I know I feel like I always have like these visions, and then I have like only so many hours in a day. So it's like we're slowly getting there. But yeah, that's just like a little bit of what I'm working on, I guess.
Yeah, but if it's important to the few people that you can connect with there, then you know it's meaningful. I did see on your Strava it had like maybe like a 1 year anniversary of a group that was running recently, and that seemed really cool.
Yeah, actually, I want to share a story about that. Is we do a group run monthly in Salt Lake City, and a month or a year ago, I advertised this. I advertised this group run, and we had a person come all the way from Idaho. This person drove 3 hours to Salt Lake
Oh,
City
that's
to
so
come up just to run, an hour with other queer identifying people. And this person told me it is their first time that they've ever ran with other like queer identifying individuals, and it was like kind of like their coming out opportunity. And so since then they've came out to their family, and it's like been, this community has been essential for them in their journey. And so it's like experiences like that that I think are really validating to me, that we need these types of communities and spaces for people like that. And then I host like annual running retreats as well. That person actually came to the running retreat that I hosted last October, and now they have like more gay running friends than I do now. So
Awesome. Give us a quick plug for that running retreat. What's the name of it?
So our community is called Out Trails, and we do an annual running retreat. That's our operations partner is Aspire. They're based out of Washington State. Aspire Venture Running, and yeah, it's just like a big retreat with about 40 identifying people. We usually make it scholarship based, so it's no cost. We'll probably launch our scholarship application in the next couple months, but yeah, that's a little bit about what the retreat's like.
Awesome.
Yeah, so check out Outruns, and you do all of that on top of working a full-time job, which is something that not everyone who's running at a pro level does in our sport. So we were just talking a little bit about how impressive it is that you train as much as you do, and are doing these advocacy efforts on top of all of that. So way to go, keep it up. And yeah, I'm sure it'll grow.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that.
All right, so we've got a few rapid fire questions to close it out here, but really appreciate all of your time and thoughts on Quad Rock, and we hope more people will check out this great race. So Russ is going to hit you with a few rapid fire questions.
Sounds
Okay,
good.
a few of them are layups, and if you want to pass on some, I'm okay with that too.
I mean, you say layups, but I don't play basketball, so a layup could still be like an air ball for me.
All right. I was looking at your Strava, and it is impressive how many different places that you run over the course of time. So give us your travel pet peeve.
Oh gosh, yeah. So, Corinne, you mentioned my day job. My day job it requires just traveling so much. And so, but as much as I complain about it, it is in my blood. Like I am a chaotic, thrive off stress person. And so I've spent most of my career traveling. Like I started my career as a traveling consultant at Accenture, and I would like travel to Seattle every week for work. Um, so I'm getting to your question, but I think my biggest pet peeve is just when I'm when I'm on schedule, like I can get stuff done, but it's like when I travel and the flight gets delayed and I get in at midnight, it just like totally implodes all of my plans. So it's not so much the travel that I can't manage, it's like the unexpected I can't manage. And you just kind of have to roll with the punches, I guess.
That's fair. That's fair. All right, give us a bucket list race for you.
Ooh, okay. So just spectating Barkley marathons, I was kind of inspired to like do something epic like that.
Wow.
But that's like the irrational Ryan. I think the more rational Ryan would like to do something like probably like a Hard Rock or a UTMB. Those are definitely like on my near term races for sure.
That is the exact opposite of candy ass trails.
I know, but I need to keep challenging myself.
Fair, totally fair. All right.
Can you tell my conflict in my brain?
Yes, I could tell. But everyone gets motivated by Barkley when it comes around. It's so enthralling, and to see Jasmine finish, and then just to see everything happen. Corinne doesn't, but
I would just have to I would show up at the start line in like bubble wrap, like ready to go.
That'd be amazing.
You could volunteer to be the sacrifice. It's okay.
Yeah. Sacrificial lamb.
All right. Give us. Do you have your shoe lined up for Boston? What are you gonna wear?
Okay, so since I used to run for Ultra, and since I left my shoe sponsorship, I've just been like trying so many different shoes because it's fun, and the market for shoes is like so intimidating and large now. And I have been testing a lot of different shoes, and I still don't know what I'm wearing at Boston. So I ran Black Canyons 2 months ago, and I think I made a decision on the shoe like the day before. So it's probably going to be something like that for Boston. Like I'll make a decision the day before.
So you were in the Ultra Fly at Black Canyon. I saw that. Do you want to give us some leaders in the clubhouse, or do you want to just avoid that conversation for potential shoe discussions later?
Well, arriving in the mail today is a Nike shoe and I think is it Asics or a New Balance? I want to say it's like an Asics super shoe. So
The
I think I'm
meta
gonna,
something? Yeah.
yeah,
Meta
like
speed.
literally after this call, I think I'm gonna go try it out. So
Awesome. Okay, I won't grill you anymore on shoes. Um, Here's my last tough question. Who is the toughest competitor that you've raced?
toughest competitor. It's hard to like because it can be defined in so many ways, but I'm gonna answer that question from like the experience of racing this human at Desert Solstice. But Nick Curry, um, if you know like the Nick Curry Ryan Montgomery feud at the 2020 Desert Solstice, it was like crazy because I essentially came back from the dead and was like closing laps on him, and like at 7 a.m. in the morning, we're like sprinting because I was like catching up to Nick's distance. And then Nick just like had been like sitting down essentially and had to like get back up because I was catching up with him. And so it was just like a really fun example of just like seeing a competitor rally and get up and, because I was coming up from behind in terms of distance. So I think that was just like a really fun memory of like racing him around the track.
Love that answer. Okay, last one for you. Favorite costume at Javelina?
Hmm. I can't remember who it was. I think it's like someone on the board or the team for the 24-hour USA team, but someone wore like a jockstrap Speedo for the whole race. And I was just so amazed by that because I'm like a big chafing person. Like I always have to tape my nipples. And so I just like couldn't imagine what running javelina in like a Speedo would be like. So
That sounds absolutely brutal.
I mean, I think we should just
so
leave
yeah,
it
definitely
there.
that person.
Running in Speedo,
Yeah,
jockstrap
that's
Speedos.
awesome.
That's like the best way to end this. Well, Ryan, thanks so much for coming on and talking with us about Quad Rock, and we can't wait to follow your whole season.
Yeah, thank you. See you later.